This program is made possible in part by the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, one of America's top research universities, preparing students for today's interdependent world with internationally focused academic and outreach programs. The Institute of World Affairs at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee presents International Focus, a weekly discussion of the people and events behind today's global headlines. Now, here's your host, Doug Savage.
Welcome to International Focus. 40 years ago, the U.S. government enacted a major shift in its formal relations with mainland China and Taiwan. Beginning in 1955, U.S. relations with Taipei were governed by the Sino-American Mutual Defense Treaty. The treaty was a defense pact designed to prevent the People's Republic of China from engaging in military aggression against Taiwan. 2.5 decades later, in 1979, the Carter administration's establishment of diplomatic relations with the mainland marked the end of the treaty with Taiwan. In its place, Congress enacted the Taiwan Relations Act, which authorized de facto diplomatic relations and a policy of supporting the island militarily, but stopping short of offering a guarantee of U.S. intervention in the event of an attack by the PRC. Often described as an example of strategic ambiguity, this policy has governed US-Taiwan relations ever since. To help us explore 40 years of the Taiwan Relations Act and to look ahead to the future of Washington's relations with Taipei, we're joined by Eric Huang, Director General of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Chicago. Director General Huang, welcome to International Focus.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to join this very interesting and important program on international affairs.
Well, I'm wondering if you could just start by just giving us some sense of the perspective on the Taiwan Relations Act in Taiwan. What does it mean to the Taiwanese government and to the general public?
It is a very critical piece of legislation of the United States of America. Although it is a U.S. domestic law, it has a lot of impact on the peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait region. For the last 40 years, there is no major instability in the region. I think we have to thank a lot to the effect of the Taiwan Relations Act. Because in the Act, there are several clauses stated the American foreign policies regarding the area of the Taiwan Strait. For example, in the Taiwan Relations Act, it stated that it is U.S. policy to consider any efforts to decide the future of Taiwan by other than peaceful means a threat to the stability and peace of the Western Pacific region and of great concern to the United States of America. So this commitment has a powerful impact on the regional stability. So we are very thankful to the U.S. commitment. And also according to the Taiwan Relations Act, the U.S. provide defense articles to Taiwan to help Taiwan to deter attack. Generally, it has a very powerful effect in stabilize the regional situation. We are very thankful for the U.S. commitment.
Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, this is really the product of a shift in policy toward a one China policy. Talk a little bit about what, from the U.S. perspective, the one China policy really is.
As a foreign diplomat, I'm afraid I'm not in a position to comment U.S. Foreign policy, but I can share with the audience that what I learned from the ex-diplomats and the diplomats of American. In 2004, in the testimony before the Congress, then Assistant Secretary James Kelly testified that probably it is not very easy to define U.S. One China policy, but he stated that it is that he can define what it is not. And it is not, according to what he said, it is not it is not what Beijing suggests. So, and according to the ex-chairman and managing director of the American Institute of Taiwan in Taiwan, Richard Bush, Mr. Richard Bush, he published in a paper last year by Brookings Institution that by only acknowledging Chinese position, the U.S. government does not adopt the U.S. position, the Chinese position as its own. So, which means that U.S. government only acknowledging the Chinese position, but does not adopt the Chinese position as the U.S. One China policy. Therefore, the One China principle of China is different from the One China policy of the U.S. government.
So I think you could put it succinctly: the One China policy is the U.S. acknowledging that China's government is in Beijing, basically, whereas the One China principle of the Chinese government says that basically China and Taiwan are part of the same political entity. They're actually one. Does that Chinese principle have different interpretations within Taiwan? I mean, for the viewers who may not be familiar with Taiwanese politics, there are two major parties, and like major parties in most countries, they often have different positions on different issues. Do you think between the two major parties in Taiwan, there's a different interpretation of the One China principle?
I think both parties, they agree that we are the Republic of China, Taiwan, that we are not part of the People's Republic of China. I think that's very clear. Probably they have some nuanced difference, but I don't think that there is a major difference in that aspect that we are the Republic of China, Taiwan.
Well, it probably would be useful for viewers who are not perhaps as familiar as others as what the implications of the Taiwan Relations Act really means in terms of, you mentioned, for example, the American Institute.
In Taiwan.
In Taiwan. Now, how does that differ from the U.S. diplomatic representation in other places? We would have an embassy. So what does that look like? How is the situation in Taiwan unique?
I think we maintain very substantive and strong relations through our representation in Washington, D.C. and the U.S. Representation in Taiwan. It is the substantive relations that we are looking for, and we value that a lot. For example, in terms of economic, cultural, educational, as well as military, I mean the defense weapons that we acquire from the U.S. I think that all of those aspects are very instrumental in maintaining the peace and stability in the Western Pacific region, and also to the democracy and prosperity of Taiwan. I cannot comment on the American U.S. policy, but I can say that it works in several ways, that Taiwan now has developed into a full-fledged democracy, and we have a market economy that can be a role model for many developing countries in the world.
But I think what I was getting at is part of the decision that was taken in 1979 by the Carter administration to establish diplomatic relations with China precluded formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan. And so there's an interesting de facto relationship where our representation in Taiwan is not called an embassy, but in fact, it really, for all intents and purposes. And similarly, There is a facility in Washington, which is the home of the diplomatic representation of Taiwan. That's not called the Taiwanese embassy, but does that cause any problems? I mean, would it be easier to do your job, for example, if you were the consulate of Taiwan in Chicago rather than the office, or in fact, does it really not matter much?
Of course, if we have formal diplomatic relations, things will go much easier. But given the circumstances, Taiwanese are very resilient. We managed to develop very pragmatic ways to communicate with our counterparts. And we have done a lot of things to promote the exchanges, the interactions between our two countries. To be frank, it is much more difficult if we, in comparison to if we have formal diplomatic relationship. But we are very appreciative of what U.S. government and people has, the assistance they have provided for Taiwan. For example, the topic we are discussing today, the Taiwan Relations Act, it provides a very solid foundation for our two countries to maintain, to sustain our relationship. Taiwan now is the 11th largest trading partner for the United States of America. And we are behind a lot of U.S. innovation. Our supply chain economically are very close and strong. For example, 70% of the Tesla electric cars components are manufactured in Taiwan. It is because of the Taiwan's strong IPR protection and our innovation capabilities. And we have to thank also to U.S. assistance in the past that you provide some scholarship, and you also have promoted such important educational exchanges programs that help Taiwanese to open their mind of the world and explore the technology and everything. Even our IPR protection now, which is very strong, it is because of that we learned a lot from the U.S. system. And it helps our economy in the longer term. So the U.S.-Taiwan relationship, although we do not have that kind of formal diplomatic relations as other countries, but our people are very resilient, and we are very pragmatic. We we find out a way to develop our relations, as well as help us to develop into a full-fledged democracy and market economy. So we are very thankful.
Well, there's certainly no shortage of pressure on Taiwan on the international stage, and the membership in international organizations which are not at their base particularly political. And I'm thinking of membership in the World Health Organization, which has been a substantial issue. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, Taiwan would very much like to participate in organizations like that. And what are the challenges?
First, the most difficult challenge will be from China. They have their political correctness, and most of the time they reduce those human rights issues or international health issues. They reduce it to merely a political issue. That's unfortunate. But the U.S. government has been very supportive for Taiwan to participate in the organizations such as the World Health Organization we just mentioned. We are the 18th largest economy in the world. In the last year, we have more than 11 million people visiting Taiwan from every corner of the world. Each year, there are 66 million travelers enter, live, or transit through Taiwan. I think it is an example that how important Taiwan in the global network. And disease respect no border. So if there is an international health crisis, Taiwan is going to be affected, and it will pose a great threat to the entire world. So we have been trying very hard to participate in the World Health Assembly, which is the governing body of the whole World Health Organization. And we are trying very hard to participate in technical meetings. But because of China's blocking, many of our attempts are unsuccessful. But we receive a lot of international support. We will keep on trying, and we will continuously seeking for support from our friendly countries like the United States of America and many other countries. It's not only the World Health Organization. There are many other organizations which are critical to the survival and safety of Taiwanese as well as people from many other countries. For example, we are looking to participate meaningfully the International Civil Aviation Organization. As I just mentioned, there are so many people passing through, enter or leaving Taiwan, and there are more than 1.66 million control flights going into Taiwan every year. So we need to have real-time information of the international civil aviation safety standards. We need to get access to those standards and guidelines in order to uphold the safety standard. But now we cannot do that. It's the same for the international health issue relevant to the WHO. We also want to contribute to the global efforts to combat the climate change. Taiwan is very successful in circular economy. The resource recycling rate in Taiwan is 52.5%. It is, I think, the third highest in the world, only surpassed by Germany and Austria. And the recycling rate for plastic bottles in Taiwan is 95%. So I remember it is in the last year, the last FIFA Football World Cup. Out of the 32 teams in the tournament, about half of the teams that wear jerseys produced from the recycled bottles in Taiwan with our technology in textile. I think it is a proof that we can contribute a lot to help the countries to contribute our expertise and experiences. But we have been rejected from participating in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. We also want to contribute to the International Criminal Police Organization because the transnational crime now is on the rise. And terrorism is also a very important issue for international cooperation. If we can also get admitted or we can participate the Interpol organization, we can help the global network to fight terrorism and transnational crime complete. These are the only 4 examples that we are looking for, and you can judge from the nature of those organizations. They are very critical in the safety, health, and life for the people of Taiwan and the people from other countries.
So the nature of cross-straits relations has changed depending on the governments on both sides. Now, Mr. Xi has been in power for some time. Do you notice any trends since his administration has taken over with regard to sort of the temperature of relations, if you will?
You mean the cross-strait relations,
Yes.
the temperature now? I think we are trying very hard to maintain the status quo. Our President Tsai has reiterated that Taiwan's position on maintaining the status quo will not change. But we need both parties to talk, and we need we need them to be cooperative. I think probably it is because that they don't truly understand the nature of the political system of Taiwan, that we are a democratic society, that any government policy has to be monitored by the people. So we are willing to talk. We are willing to have dialogue with them peacefully, based on equality. But we are not willing to accept a situation that they are sending their naval vessels and military aircraft to circle Taiwan from time to time. I think the discussion or kind of dialogues between two sides of Taiwan Strait should be conducted in a very peaceful and equal way.
Well, we get some sense of the current thinking in Beijing, it seems, when Mr. Xi made a speech last January specifically addressing the cross-straits relations. Talk a little bit about what he said and how that was received in Taiwan.
Basically, he offered a formula, but it is an old formula called one country, two system. The one country, two systems formula will not work. We are a sovereign country that our president has made it clear that they must face the reality that of the existence of the Republic of China, Taiwan. Our president also made it clear that China must respect the commitment of the 23 million people in Taiwan to democracy and freedom. We think that if Taiwan accepts the one country, two systems formula, our sovereignty will be destroyed, and nobody in Taiwan will accept that we are going to live in an undemocratic country.
Well, there was a similar model for Hong Kong, was there not? When China established control over Hong Kong, much of the rhetoric seemed very similar. That yes, there's one country, there are just two systems. It'll be a different system for Hong Kong, and that actually hasn't turned out to be the case.
Taiwan is the Republic of China is a sovereign country. We are different from Hong Kong.
Right.
We have our own military. We conduct our foreign policy independently. We issue our own currency, passport, visa. We have never been governed by the other side of the Taiwan Strait for one day. So, and we have developed a full-fledged democracy. I think that's basically the fact that we are so different from Hong Kong. So nobody in Taiwan, I'm pretty confident, will accept that we destroy our sovereignty, our democracy, and our freedom.
Well, we of course are about halfway through a new administration in this country, and there was an interesting start to US-Taiwanese relations. There was a telephone call between President Tsai and President Trump. Talk a little bit about the significance of that.
I think it's the first time, but I think the friendship of America and American can be exemplified in many ways. For example, the continuous arms sale to Taiwan, the continuous economic and the cultural exchanges. So that lays a solid foundation for future development. The conversation is meaningful, and we are looking for many other aspects of cooperation in the future. But I don't think that we will overly emphasize the significance of one single dialogue, but it is meaningful. It is meaningful.
Well, certainly it's a region that's of great interest to people in this country, and obviously Taiwan is a huge part of that dynamic. So we appreciate you coming to explain some of the dynamics that are going on. And
thank you.
We look forward to keeping an eye on that story. To our viewers, we'll see you next time on International Focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This program is made possible in part by the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, one of America's top research universities, preparing students for today's interdependent world with internationally focused academic and outreach programs.